Welcome to Travels with Tom. I'm here with Tom Rowley, who has been to the Middle East many times, and he's also a wonderful writer and has brought some photos with him. And I'm your host, Nathan Bynum. So Tom,
Yes, Nathan.
It's good to see you here. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me here, Nathan. It's a pleasure.
Yeah. And how did you originally get interested in the Middle East, and how is the Middle East still a part of your life today?
Well, I first got interested in the Middle East, most especially in grad school when I was a graduate student. I had been studying Arabic for several years, from college up to grad school, but it wasn't until 2007 that I went to the country of Jordan, and that was sort of my gateway into the Middle East. And I studied Arabic there for a semester and took a couple different side trips to Egypt for one. But Jordan was really my gateway into the Middle East, and I have a few photos from Jordan.
Wonderful.
Yeah, that I'd like to share. So we have a few photos from Petra, which is Jordan's probably their most famous tourist attraction. A lot of people know Petra because it was featured in the movie Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Yes,
Here you see the entrance of Petra. That's sort of walking up to the main fissure. It's in a sandstone valley, and so in the next picture you'll see going through the valley. You'll walk through this sandstone fissure, and you'll come up to the treasury. That's the most famous from the movie.
Okay.
There's another picture there.
There it is.
Yeah, there it is, and there's a camel with the treasury. That's the great treasury of Petra there. And that was...
And is it carved directly into the rock there?
It's carved directly into the sandstone. So Petra isn't just this one building, it's a whole city that was founded by an ancient tribe called the Nabateans.
Wow.
So that was their treasury building. Further on down the line, you have to walk down a long, long street, and there's a monastery at the other end of the city. And so we have a picture of that too that you'll be able to see. It's looking down over it from a big sandstone bluff.
Wow. And everything in Petra is carved into the limestone cliff.
Sandstone, yeah.
Sandstone,
it's called the Rose Red City because the sandstone is so vibrantly red.
Wow.
But Petra isn't Jordan's only tourist attraction. It's just its most famous. So Jordan also has other places you can visit, like the desert campground called Wadi Rum, which is a big expanse of desert that you can go camping in. So that's another interesting place to go.
Wow. What was it about your first visits to Jordan that really captivated you and made you want to see more of the Middle East?
What captivated me most about Jordan once I got there, I went to study language there, but what really drew me in were the people that I met and the food that I tasted and all the sights and sounds around Jordan that prompted me to go elsewhere in the Middle East. So towards the end of my time in Jordan, a friend and I took a trip to Cairo, Egypt.
Oh, nice.
Too, it's next door to Jordan, just southwest of Jordan. And so there's a lot, of course, to see in Cairo. And I think we have another picture of the pyramids. That's, of course, the most famous tourist attraction, the pyramids and the Great Sphinx.
Wow.
There are the pyramids right there. Those are the Great Pyramids of Egypt. We have, from left to right, the Pyramid of Menkaure, and Khafre is in the middle, and Khufu is towards the right side of that. Those are the three big ones in the background.
Nice. What are the three small ones in the foreground?
Those go along with Menkaure. They were built around the same time, but obviously they're of lesser importance because they're smaller ones. So.
Okay. Did you go inside the pyramids?
I went inside a few pyramids. They're fairly empty now because all of the treasures have sort of been pulled out and put in museums. And that's sort of an issue among the Middle East, is what to do with antiquities now.
Right.
Whether it's right to leave them where they are or whether it's right to put them in museums and whose museums you put them in. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, I understand there's more Egyptian obelisks in Rome than there are in Egypt.
Yep, for sure.
Very interesting. So did you go with a guide to these places, or did you just kind of show up? And
My travel mantra has always just sort of been to show up. I like to kind of wing it with just a little bit of preparation so that I'm not,
Right.
totally out on a limb. But I really like to land in one city and then travel around and end up somewhere else and leave from somewhere else. That's sort of what I like to do and have the journey in between be the main show. So.
Yeah.
But one of the most interesting places that I've been to that I did something like that was in Syria.
That's hot in the news these days,
It's hot in the news
unfortunately.
these days, yeah, and it's really sad for me to see what's going on right now. When I was there, I first went there in 2007, and then I went back in 2009 for a much more extensive trip. And I showed up first in Damascus, and there are a lot of things to see in Damascus. The most important of which is probably the Umayyad Mosque, the Grand Mosque of Damascus. I think we might have a picture of that one too.
Okay.
It was, yeah, there it is.
There it is.
The Great Mosque of Damascus was important because it was the seat of the first Islamic Caliphate.
So this isn't the mosque. Can we go back one slide?
Sure.
Let's see if we can go back one slide. Okay. Okay, I guess we can.
So
That's okay.
what this is here, this is right next to the Great Mosque of Damascus. This is called Souk Hamadiya. Souk is like a market or a bazaar in the Middle East. And it can also be like a way to denote a neighborhood. So this is the neighborhood in the market right next to the Grand Mosque of Damascus.
Wow.
And they sell everything there, from ice cream to textiles to handicrafts. You can find it all there.
Wow, and you were talking about the Grand Mosque itself. You said it was part of a caliphate.
Yeah, so
Talk more about that.
Damascus was the capital of the first Islamic Caliphate. And the Umayyad Mosque was an important piece of this because it was one of the grandest mosques outside of the holy sites of Mecca and Medina. So
And
that
what is
was
a caliphate?
a caliphate back in the day was basically like an Islamic empire, the extent of Islamic lands in the Middle East. And so, you hear that word come up again now in the news. Various groups want to try and reestablish a caliphate.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. And that street that is right outside of the caliphate or of the mosque is, that's a market today as well.
It's
And
still a
been
market.
one forever.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, Damascus lays claim to the title of the longest, oldest continually inhabited city in the world.
Wow.
About 3,000 years or more.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So where else have you traveled in the Middle East?
Well, in Syria, in 2009, I did this trip up through a whole bunch of cities in Syria. And one of the things that I like the most is that you get to experience the food and the people along the way. So, I went up to Aleppo, and there's some great food to be found up there. Here we have some sweets, and this is called manish. That's basically like a flatbread type of treat that's on a roadside stand, and it's delicious. Really delicious.
Yeah, often the street food is very good if you're a little bit adventurous.
Right. So going up to Aleppo, there's a lot to see there. There's a citadel there. I think we have a picture further down of that one too, further down the line. There's a citadel. There's a great market that is there or used to be there, unfortunately, because, there's the citadel.
That's impressive.
Yeah, it's
When
impressive.
Was that built?
Oh, gosh. The early Islamic period, I believe it was, yeah.
Before 1000.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah, and there's also a lot of markets and food to be found there, or at least there used to be, and that's one of the sad parts is Aleppo's market was a UNESCO heritage site, and it burned down to the ground in 2012. We have a video that we can put up, I think, of sort of a trip that I took through the market back a few years ago before the war in Syria started.
And none of this exists anymore.
And almost all of it is burned to the ground now, which is a real shame.
Yeah.
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 So, but among the things that you'll see in the market are items like Aleppan soap. That was one of the things that it was most famous for. You'll see street vendors, cherry kebabs, things like that. Very delicious food and sights and sound to be seen. So
That sounds amazing. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to get to the video of the market, but
okay, that's fine.
we'll see. I think that we're working on it.
Okay.
It sounds amazing, though. So, what's your favorite food from the market?
From the Aleppo market, I would say it would have to be the cherry kebab. You can really only find it in Aleppo. It's a specialty to that city. So it's basically like a meat kebab that has this unique cherry sauce that gets poured over it, and it's really delicious. They also have another type of food called muhammara, which is sort of like a hummus dish, but it's red and it's made out of nuts, and there we have some food up there that we can look at. Some
Yum. Making me
shawarma and some vegetables and some salads and things. So
That's phenomenal.
very yummy food. Yeah.
Excellent. So, where else did your travels take you?
Well, on that same trip that I went to Syria a few years back, I also went to Lebanon afterwards, which was a lot of fun. Lebanon is sort of known as the more liberal country in the Middle East, especially its capital, Beirut. But overall, it's just a wonderful country to visit. And I started my journey in Tripoli, coming out of Syria. Tripoli is sort of the northern, most prominent northern city in Lebanon. And there's a sweet shop that I visited in Tripoli, very delicious. And I sort of went down the coast from north to south. From Tripoli, I went on to a place called Byblos, and there's a beautiful harbor there that you can look at. Further on south of there, there's a place called Harissa, which has a sizable Christian community in the village, and there's a big statue called the Virgin of Harissa that looks down over the mountain, down into the bay. Very pretty.
So it's a pretty multicultural area.
Very multicultural. Yeah, and you notice that when you get to Beirut. Beirut has a sizable Christian population, sizable Shia and Sunni Muslim populations, an Armenian population that also lives within it. So there are a number of different religious sects that make their home in the capital of Beirut.
Nice.
Yeah, and that's another country that had a 15-year civil war, run from 75 to 1990. And so now Syria, its neighbor, is sort of experiencing the same thing. But hopefully it doesn't take that long to solve the problem next door.
Yeah, inshallah.
Yeah, inshallah, if God wills it.
That's right.
Yeah.
But when you visited Lebanon, it was peaceful and different people were living together pretty peacefully?
It was peaceful, and there was a lot of construction going on, which is promising.
Good news.
That's something that country has to deal with a lot, is how business contracts are doled out. And so it's been a sort of a big political issue, like between which politicians and which businessmen different contracts get doled out. Has been a big deal, and what kind of foreign money is coming into the country to help build these things. So,
sounds like a challenge, yeah.
Challenge for the country.
Because you want to
sure.
rebuild, but you want to rebuild in your own way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I understand you also went to Jerusalem, which is also in the news quite a bit.
I did go to Jerusalem a couple of years ago in 2013, which was my first time there. And Jerusalem is, of course, always in the news, and it's in the news because it's the home to a lot of different faiths. Principally, Jews, Muslims, and Christians. And I think the first picture we have there of Jerusalem, it's a wide panoramic shot, but it displays sort of what I'm talking about. So if you look at the left side of the picture, the first thing that everybody sees is that big golden dome, and that's called the Noble Sanctuary, the Haram al-Sharif. And it was that spot that the Prophet Muhammad in Islam ascended to heaven from.
Wow.
Coincidentally, that happens to also sit right on the Temple Mount that Jews consider to be holy. So that is the old site of the Jewish temple, and what's left of it, directly below that golden dome, is the Wailing Wall, or the western wall of the Temple Mount that you hear so often about. And that's where many Jews go to pray, and they place their prayers on pieces of paper and stick them in the wall in hopes that they will be heard more clearly or more expediently. Also sort of nearby the Temple Mount is the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which is, of course, the place where Jesus was crucified, or known to have been crucified. And there's a shot of it there. That's sort of looking up in the center of the church. So that's the spot in the Bible that's called Golgotha, or the place of skulls.
Oh, wow.
So, there's...
And how far away is that from the Temple Mount and the mosque?
Oh, not very far at all, just a few steps, about a 2 or 3 minute walk from there.
Amazing.
Yeah. And Jerusalem, of course, also has an old souk. So it features a lot of things like spices. There it is right there. Things like frankincense and myrrh. The biblical spices are sold sort of as tourist items. So that's sort of what a tourist might see going through the old city. It's a fairly typical. Yeah, it's a very pretty, typical looking souk or bazaar.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay. So I also understand that you took a travel to Morocco.
I did. Morocco is a little bit further afield from the other places we've talked about so far. It's in the northwest corner of Africa, but it's also part of the Arabic-speaking world. And when I went to Morocco, I was also trying to study Arabic. And but when I landed, I didn't realize it at the time, but I had booked my flight to arrive into Morocco on an Islamic holiday, Eid al-Adha.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, when
That's the sacrifice, right?
The Feast of the Sacrifice, and it's supposed to be the story of Cain and Abel that...
Wasn't... Okay.
Yeah.
Not Abraham and Isaac.
Or Abraham and Isaac, you're correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And the sacrifice that was supposed to have been made. And so to commemorate it, a lot of Muslims, they'll sacrifice sheep. And so you see a lot of sheep being slaughtered and then roasted and eaten.
Yeah.
And then they take the hide and sell it at market the next day or the day after.
Right.
So
there we have it right there.
And there's an example of the Feast of the Sacrifice. They've skinned the sheep and they're grilling some of it over in that barrel in the right side of the shot there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was there in Egypt for the same holiday.
Yes.
And it did make me realize how much closer to food people are there. You know, like, because we pretty much put all the slaughter behind closed doors and we don't really see it or think about it. But there, it's part of the holiday. Yeah,
and every country has their own particular cuisines. Morocco is known especially for tagines. And I think we have a picture of that too. There's a tagine. A tagine is basically like a rice and vegetable and or meat dish that's cooked in a big ceramic domed pot, and that's called the tagine. So the food gets its name from the pot it's cooked in.
That's beautiful. Very appetizing.
It's really yummy. But yeah, that's part of the journey too, is the food.
Absolutely.
So
it's time to wrap up a little our conversation. Do you have any closing words about what it would be like to travel in the Middle East for people who maybe haven't done it, and how to do it well, how to travel well?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody should definitely travel to the Middle East. You always hear the negative stereotypes of it in the news, but barring places that are obviously dangerous now, like Syria, You shouldn't really be that scared. You can go to the State Department's website and look up travel advisories and see what they recommend, but don't be afraid. And I think, you know, the general rule for traveling anywhere is go someplace with a smile on your face. Be nice to people. If you're going to take photographs, make sure to ask for permission if you're taking a photograph of a person. You know, just obey like common sense civility rules.
Yeah, common courtesy and
yeah.
kindness.
So, it's been a pleasure being on your show.
Well, thank you very much.
And I hope to be back. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate your taking a brief amount of time out of your day to travel with us. And safe travels and happy travels to you.